Welcome to Whatif tutorials. In this tutorial we'll be looking at job-related master files. These files must be populated before you can commence creating job quotes. We'll be looking at job types, that is for classification purposes and other purposes. We'll be then looking at cost drivers and their classes. Cost drivers being the variable that drives the cost of resources, whether they be materials or labour, subcontract or other cost operations. Then we'll be looking at subcontract operations and their classes. These are standard operations that can be applied to jobs. And then we'll be looking at the standard material usage by driver. This is where a driver tracks a standard usage each time. So these can be created and then used as required when doing a job. Finally, we'll be looking at supplier master files. First off, let's go to master files, then click job related master files. First of all, job types. You can create as many job types as you like, and each job you then subsequently create must be one type or another, and you can declare one of these job types as a default. Now the job type, if we edit the job type, you can see first of all it has a code, it has a description, it has a lead time which you can change. That's a default lead time, that is the number of days before the job can start, and it has a default duration, that is the number of days the job will take. Now this may be appropriate where you are doing repetitive type of work that needs these defaults or goes with these defaults. Next, this area here, it covers the markups. In the job quotes, the costs can be divided into materials, labour, overhead, subcontract operations and any other costs. Now each of these cost elements has a markup percent that you determine. Excuse me. So you can apply, say, 6% to materials, 7% to labour and so on, so that when you build up your costs of a job for each of materials, labour and so on, the price for the job will in total be determined by these markups. Of course you can then override that suggested price if you so desire. Finally, we have two types of pricing. It's either fixed or variable. So fixed price jobs are those where a standard service is provided with little or no fluctuation in costs from job to job. Variable price jobs are those where the quoted price will be based on the scope of the job as required by customers. So you can create a job type, and it can be fixed or it can be variable depending upon the job type, of course. Okay, close this. So that was job types. Now let's have a look at drivers. Cost drivers are the variables which drive the cost of either material or labour or subcontract and other. So a good example of a cost driver, we'll just go into cost drivers, maybe doors. Let's select doors. So the driver in this case is doors. It has a code and it has a description and it has a class. So we can put our drivers into several classes to make it easier to find them. And we can put some comments about the use of the driver, and we need a unit of measure. So we need a unit of measure for every driver. So we're saying here it's each door. the driver is the number of doors. So in a particular job, the number of doors in a building, for example, of a certain type, the number of doors will drive the cost. Okay, so let's close that. Back to master files, job related. So we talked about creating cost drivers and driver classes. Excuse me. Now let's look at subcontract and other operations, those other two elements of cost. We grouped them together because it's convenient to do so. Now once again we have classes and we have operations. Now these operations are standard operations. So let's have a look at those. We've got one here. You can create an operation. It'll either be for subcontract or other cost. They all come in together, and as you can see they're tagged as either sub or OTH. So we then select a class code. In this case we selected class 1 with its description. We gave it an operation code and the operation here, what it actually is. Now every standard subcontract or other operation must have a driver code. So we select driver. Now we talked about drivers a moment ago. If there is no driver, then we say that it has a no driver applicable, which is called job, so that the driver quantity in that case is 1. So this covers every instance where there is no other specific driver that you are going to use to determine the cost. So we'll use that in this case. So we've got a standard operation, subcontract operation. The driver is job, no driver applicable. We can select the supplier and the buy unit, the cost per buy unit, the driver usage unit. I'll change that to each. And the conversion between usage units and buy units, in this case, is 1 because they're the same. Then we've got a sell unit, which in most cases also is the same, but could be possibly different. Let's say it's the same, so that the sell usage conversion is also 1. We then have a cost per sell unit, because we've converted the cost per buy unit into a cost per sell unit using the conversion of 1. And we have a markup percent. Now that markup percent comes from the standard subcontract class 1 markup there. So if we'd have made the class that, we would get a different markup percent. So that's what the classes of standard subcontracts operations does. It brings in the standard markup that you want to apply to that. So that's brought in 14%, so the sell price will be $31.90. Therefore the gross profit is 9 and the percent sales is that. So if we are selling a subcontract operation, first we've got to buy it or pay for it, and then we're going to on sell it to our customers as a subcontract. Okay, so let's close that. We'll go back now to our master files, and we go up to subcontract operations and their classes. Now, standard material usage. We can have a standard materials usage per driver unit. So this allows us to create a standard usage for a driver, and wherever the driver is used in association with a particular material, you will get a standard usage. So the two things that have to be in line here are the driver code. So we say the driver code might be doors. Take that. The driver description is doors each, and we're going to say an item code. We'll pick any item in here, a mount bracket used, and we're now relating the usage of the mount bracket to the driver. So we're saying it's taking, let's say, 4 mount brackets per door for this particular usage of these brackets. And we click OK. So now we've created that standard usage of materials for that item of material related to this particular that item related to this particular driver, doors. Yes. Okay, close that. Alright, so that brings us down to suppliers. We have supplier types for classification purposes, we have shipping methods, and we have suppliers master file. Let's have a look at that. In the suppliers master file, let's edit one of these. We simply have a code, a description, and the suppliers get classified by type, just as we classified standard operations and drivers and so on. It has a currency, and it has a lead time, and it has a shipping method. Okay, so that's the suppliers. So having created all of those job related master files, we are now ready to create a job quote, assuming we've done also the customer related master files and the labour and overhead related master files. These two are covered in other tutorials. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial.